welcome on in to the latest edition of the Blue Horseshoe podcast. He is George Bremer. I am Ryan Hickey. And George, we were literally just joking. I think this is the case. We have maybe a cheerful, truly happy, for the most part, drama-free podcast for the first time, maybe all at training camp. This is going to be a fun pod here because we learned just a few short minutes ago, George, on Tuesday, that Anthony Richardson is officially the starter. A good time to wear the AR time t-shirt, George. I'm shocked by the timing of the announcement. We joked about it at the start of training camp. I think the over-under, I believe, the day was August 26th. Will we get a starting quarterback announcement? We both hammered the over. Another bold prediction by us there, George. But on Tuesday, August 15th, we now know who the 8th different starting quarterback in 8 consecutive years will be, is Anthony Richardson. I'll ask you this, George, to start off the conversation here. Timing-wise, still 3 weeks left of preseason, 2 preseason games to go. Are you surprised by the timing of the announcement that we found out relatively early from a guy in Shane Steichen, who, the little we know of him so far, loves to keep a lot of things close to the vest?
I mean, first of all, isn't this technically scheme? And we don't talk about schemes, so yeah, definitely shocked. But first of all, it's the right call. I want to get that out of the way right off the top. I think it was the right decision. And also, I'm glad they did it from a professional standpoint, because I was afraid that they were going to play the game, because most coaches would. I mean, let's be honest, most coaches do. And so we would see Richardson out there taking all the first team reps. But because especially, I mean, look, he had the out. Because if he wanted to just have Richardson take first team reps today, as he did, obviously practice, and tomorrow and Thursday against the Bears, after that, not the whole media is traveling to Philadelphia, but even then, that's the only other open practice left before the season starts. So you could just say, well, we want to give him as many reps as we did in the joint practice. We haven't made a decision. I thought they were going to go that way, because after that, we wouldn't see, if they were rotating or not. And to Shane Steichen's credit, one of the first big tests, for him as a head coach in terms of how he's dealing with the media, look, we're not going to play the game. We've made the decision. He's a starter, and we're just going to let everybody know. And I think it's good from the team standpoint. I think it's good for the quarterback standpoint. You can now sit down. Anthony was talking about, it was a 2-hour conversation that they had when he was told that he'd start, and only like the first 30 seconds of the beginning of it were football, where basically Shane said, hey, you're going to be starting quarterback. After that, it's just the two of them building that relationship that they have to have between the head coach and the quarterback. Now you can start tailoring this offense towards him and not worrying about, what works for Gardner Minshew and what doesn't work for Gardner Minshew. You can start, Josh Downs was out there with the ones more today. Maybe that was coincidence. Maybe not. You can start tailoring the personnel to Anthony Richardson. I mean, it's just, and a team now knows moving forward. You've got this, like you said, 2 preseason games left. I think 4 weeks overall of practice before they start on September 10th against the Jaguars. And you can go into this now understanding, okay, he's the guy. And I think it's better than having, look, it's one of the oldest cliches in football. If you have 2 quarterbacks, you don't have any. And now they have 1. So I think it's just all the way around. I think it's the best for every facet of the team.
It's the right choice, right? It's the obvious choice. We both were behind it. We said he has to start week number 1 and be the starter for this year in 2023. And Shane Steichen and the Colts agreed. The thing I love the most about this timing, George, is the fact that he is now getting, like you said, he's getting all of QB1 reps. And the biggest thing we talked about with Anthony Richardson is lack of experience, lack of reps, and how he's going to get better is by practicing, is by getting that experience on the field. And up to this point, for the most part, it's been an even split, we'll say, between him and Minshew going with the first team. And so you can look at it as the fact of, well, he's getting half the reps then. And even though he's getting reps with the twos and getting still reps otherwise, he is getting half the reps with the starters for basically the first half of training camp. How does that help him develop? How does that help him get better? Now, like you said, when you still have just about 3.5 weeks till the season starts. You have still 3 joint practices, which now you hear coaches talk about how important those are. And maybe even joint practices are more important than the games. So you have 3 joint practices, 2 preseason games left. You still have plenty of time to give Anthony Richardson a lot of meaningful reps with the first team, develop extra chemistry with his offense, get that Alec Pierce relationship even stronger, get on the same page as Michael Pittman Jr., have the offensive line be able to learn how to block for him. Because that's, again, like we've seen the last few years, George, with Matt Ryan, Phillip Rivers, even Carson Wentz, a lot of statues in under center. Now it's a totally different, style of quarterback you're game planning for and trying to protect for you're the offensive line with how mobile he is. So you're learning that, and that's another learning curve. There's plenty of time now, basically a month before the season, to allow Richardson to get as many meaningful reps with the starters as possible. And for a guy that his biggest knock right now is lack of experience, I love it, George, from, like I said, that perspective of this more than anything else allows him to now get all of the first team reps and allows him to get the requisite practice needed before he does step on the field week number 1 and be as prepared as you possibly could be for a rookie. It still has a steep learning curve to go.
Absolutely. And it's not just the offensive line learning to block for him, it's skill guys too. I mean, Farrell Brown, he gets that holding penalty down there in the red zone that would have put the ball at the 5-yard line and probably would have finished off that drive with a touchdown. But it gets called back on the hold. And you go back and you look at that and you think, if he just gets out of the way, Richardson's likely to either outrun that guy or run him over. It's little things like that.
That's a good point.
That you're going to learn as you go, that maybe just like we were talking about Richardson learning from the McKenzie interception, that, hey, in this situation in the future, it's better for me to, even if I get an intentional grounding flag, that's better for me than an interception that sets up a touchdown for the opposing team. Same thing for the guys out there blocking now. It's probably better to just get out of the way and let him do his thing. If it's close. I mean, obviously you want to still give him lanes and you want to still, do your part to help. But in a situation like that where Farrell Brown's kind of out of position, he's got to reach and get the holding flag, he's probably better off just letting it go and taking the likelihood that Richardson's going to beat the guy anyway one-on-one.
That's a good point too, because you're right. Like now, sometimes, like we saw him even in his first designed run, made the first guy that was unblocked miss, ran over a DB. So you're right. Like now, you could change the way you block because this guy is fast and strong. Where maybe, not blocking and just avoiding the holding call altogether is the best, like I said, case going forward here for how you're going to prevent those penalties from just killing the Colts. And you kind of, like I said, you learn by experience of what his playing style is like and how you can adjust your blocking style, your route running style to fit what Richardson does well. You mentioned before, George, too, what this also does, not just for Richardson, but the team, is allow his leadership now to grow. Not that he's not going to be a captain, right, as a rookie quarterback. That's not going to happen. But now that he's officially the starter, the offense can look at him differently, right? Because when you are in a quarterback battle and you're splitting time between 2 guys and 2 different voices, not that you don't take what they say seriously, but it's hard to kind of listen if one guy is hard on you or one guy is trying to, command respect when you kind of know in the back of your head, if you're Michael Pittman Jr. or Quentin Nelson, look, this guy's might not be the starter. So like, who is he to yell at me sort of thing? Now you eliminate that. You leave no doubt, hey, Richardson is our guy. And that just, in a way, allows him to maybe have a little bit better command of the huddle going forward. Maybe if someone screws up a route, be more vocal or be more constructive on how to make sure it doesn't happen again. And just kind of allow him to get quickly, like, earn the respect of players around him now that they know, okay, this is the guy, we're rallying around him. It also helps the team overall in offense, not just, like I said, with playing style, but also from a leadership and respect style. Say, all right, he's the guy now. His voice is the one that matters. Not that Gardner Minshew's voice didn't matter, but it is different, George, right? It is different coming from now the starting quarterback compared to up until a few hours ago on Tuesday. It was a guy competing for the quarterback position.
Yeah, I mean, he can build relationships now with his teammates on a different level. He can build relationships with the coaching staff on a different level. It's having that title. And I thought it was good that Richardson pointed out, he worked really hard to get this title, but it's not the final destination. Now the work begins. Now you've earned this spot. Now you got to go out there and help this team win games. And as he said, chase greatness, which is what he's talked about from, really even before he was drafted. So I think it gives him more credibility, in that huddle. It gives him more credibility in the locker room in general. But also it lets a team, with decision making, they don't have to play games now with these last 2 preseason games. If you want to sit out your starting quarterback We know who that is. You can go ahead and say, you know what, he got the reps he needed in these joint practices. He's not going to play at all against Chicago or Philadelphia, or he's only going to play one series or whatever it may be. Now you don't have to worry about that. I think when it was still a competition, you have to kind of, I don't want to tip my hand. I don't want to give something away here. Now it's everybody knows you don't have to worry about that. You can just do what's best for the quarterback, what's best for the offense as a whole, which I think is always, what position you want to be in.
Right. Like if you're Shane Steichen now and Jim Bob Cooter and everyone else in offense, like you may know in the back of your head, hey, we want Richardson to be the starter. We want him to, like I said, get the job. But like you said, if you don't announce it publicly, even though maybe in the back of your mind and privately in meeting stuff, you're starting to game plan for how the offense will look. But if you don't want anyone else to know, if you don't want even, the word to get out until September 9th, the night before, the game starts, you're in a way working with one hand tied behind your back just because you're being so secretive. You can't go all in and truly just pour every ounce of effort into developing an offense that's going to work for Richardson because you still got to have Gardner Minshew out there. And it is a separate offense with Minshew running it compared to Richardson running it. You saw that at Buffalo right away. All the zone read looks that Richardson got versus Gardner Minshew kind of being more a straight drop back passer. Now you don't have to hide. You can be very intentional. Everything we are doing, like I said, from this point on, and maybe it started at practice Tuesday with the personnel out there, you could truly tinker, mess around with, experiment these last 3 weeks, George. What will work well? What won't work well? You're going to get great chances going against the starters for the Bears and the Eagles. So you're going to give Richardson an opportunity and all the reps to truly kind of get those game-like atmospheres against solid defenses and quality starters to truly see what the NFL game is like. And we kind of said it jokingly after the preseason game, George, but now I think you're starting to maybe see the reason why Steichen made this announcement on Tuesday. That Colts second string offensive line was putrid. Right? There's a lot of projects there. There's a lot of question marks, and we saw Gardner Minshew get swallowed up a few times, have no chance. If you're Shane Steichen, you see that. If you truly wanted this to be a quarterback competition, you would think then preseason game number 2 against the Bears on Saturday, you would allow Minshew to run with the starters to see what he can do. That means you're putting AR behind that porous, to say the least, offensive line. Do you really want your number 4 overall pick just for the sake of competition or to hold your cards close to the vest? You want him playing behind that offensive line for a significant amount, for any amount of time? No, there's no point. All you're doing is really hurting his development and putting him in harm's way compared to helping in your team at all. So at least also that, George, this announcement, whether you play him against the Bears or not, basically eliminates any chance of him playing behind that offensive line, that second string offensive line that, boy, oh boy, to say the least, to put it nicely, did not look very good in Buffalo.
They had a rough day. There's no doubt about it. First 2 snaps, it doesn't get much worse than that. There's no question about it. But also, I think in terms of like what it does for the rest of the team, I think it has an impact on the other competition battles. I mean, you've got that slot receiver battle between Josh Downs and Isaiah McKenzie. There's a lot of tight ends that are hurt, but there's a lot of battles going on with them as well, and I think now having Anthony Richardson as a quarterback, you can just see who works best with him in particular. I think before that, you've got that added, complication there of, okay, well, this guy's better with Minshew, this guy's better with Richardson. Who do we choose? That's out of the equation now. You can just get the guys who work best with your starting quarterback and move on from there.
Let me ask you this, George, because we have seen this was a trend like in the early 2000s. You draft a quarterback and you sit him for bare minimum a year. It was like not even a question, right? You never really played your rookie quarterback. Then we got into a stage where a lot of rookie quarterbacks have been playing. And now it's I would say half and half, but we've seen guys like Patrick Mahomes sit for a year, Trey Lance sit for a year, Kenny Pickett sit for a few games, Justin Fields sit for a few games. Teams have not been shy about drafting a quarterback high in the first round and then sitting them for at least some, if not all, of their rookie season. Anthony Richardson, and I'm definitely guilty of this, hand up for sure, was someone that I thought in the pre-draft process was someone that the Colts drafted would sit for a year bare minimum just with his lack of experience playing at Florida and the learning curve that he had to face going from the Gators now to, as we know, the Colts. And definitely the more we kind of dove into it, in my opinion, has changed where it came from, oh, he's got to sit for a year. Actually, he's not that far away to now. Actually, it's a hindrance, I think, if he does sit. Do you have any sort of, I guess, pause, maybe is the right word, in putting, and for lack of a better term, throwing Richardson to the wolves here week number 1, is there any sort of positive the Colts could have had in starting Gardner Minshew for even the first few games and letting Richardson watch behind Minshew? Or do you think this is absolutely the right move and basically throwing him out in the deep end and say, here, kid, sink or swim?
Yeah, I think with his lack of experience, I think it is the right move to just get him out there and let him go. I mean, we talk all the time, in the real world, when someone doesn't get hired and they say, well, you don't have the experience for this job. And then there was, well, how are you going to get it? How on earth are you going to become whatever that position is? It's no different here. How is he going to become an experienced quarterback? By playing the position. So, you want to get him out there. And as I said, I think all along, the big questions for me were, can he command the huddle? Which, if you talk to the offensive lineman, that's not an issue. Does he know the offense? Coaches are saying that that's all good and well, that it's all there. And is he mentally tough to handle adversity? You saw that on Saturday when he threw an interception on the first play and shook it off, came back and had two pretty nice drives to finish out. So I think as long as those checks are there, we knew coming in that physically he was a freak. Anyone knows that. That's probably the easiest evaluation in NFL history. But what was the work ethic going to be like? How quickly was he going to pick these things up? That's all been checked off in a major positive way as well. So, and I think the team, once they actually got their hands on him, realized maybe he's a little closer than they thought. I mean, we were talking about that as far back as rookie minicamp. Yes, he's raw. Yes, he needs to work on his consistency. His accuracy needs to come along. There's things. Bryce Young has things he needs to work on. It doesn't matter. Every rookie quarterback has things they need to work on. But I think his pocket presence, his ability to sort of feel the pressure and move his feet and get where he needs to be, those kind of things I think were much more advanced than maybe you would expect them to be for a guy with just 13 collegiate starts. And I think that all played into when you get a guy with this talent level, this work ethic, this intelligence, and that kind of feel for what he needs to do on the field. Probably more of a disservice to sit him than it is to get him out there and let him play.
For a while, I was on the other end in the sense that, hey, put kid gloves on, take it slow. If they need a year or so, like, don't rush them out there. The worst you can do is kind of rush a quarterback out there when they're not ready and kind of hurt their development. And for a while, I thought that. I'd never forget, like, when Trey Lance was drafted by the 49ers, I think I said him for a year. I said, no problem. That makes all the sense in the world. I'll never forget, Daniel Jeremiah was talking about it, and he goes, how do you expect a quarterback? And the biggest thing with Trey Lance was, right, the lack of experience. Had 1 year starting North Dakota State, played one game in the COVID season, and that was it. So kind of like Richardson, basically 1 year starting and then drafted high in the first round. And I'll never forget, Daniel Jeremiah, great NFL Network analyst, if you are unaware of his name, was basically like, how do you expect a quarterback to improve if they're not playing? And honestly, it changed my entire outlook of the position and kind of the philosophy of, like, he's right. Like, watching maybe a little bit can help benefit, and you can learn some things from a veteran. In this case, Anthony, I'm sure he's learning tips and tricks from Gardner Minshew, but the best way to learn, the best way to improve is by doing. And you heard him just talk about the first interception on the first drive against Buffalo in his preseason debut. Like, Richardson just learned from there, made the pick, and realized, you know what? Next time, just taking the sack, throwing the ball away, taking the intentional grounding, any of those options are better than what I did. I would say it's harder to remember that and learn that if roles reversed and Gardner Minshew made that mistake. Like, you always think, oh, I won't do that. Then you get in the game and you realize, oh, wow, like, this is faster than I thought, or whatever it is. I think just the development helps so much better when you are on the field playing. Even if you're making mistakes, it just helps to learn, and you hopefully learn from mistakes and not make the same mistake twice. But I think that's just the best way to develop, is just throwing them out there. And the thing I think I kind of came around to, George, is if you can play, you can play. Like, sitting a year or so is not going to do anything. If you can't play, also sitting a year is not going to help you. Like, you look at Patrick Mahomes. I don't think Patrick Mahomes is any different of a quarterback today if he played as a rookie in 2017 compared to sitting behind Alex Smith. So it's like, if you are great, and we know Patrick Mahomes is great, he was going to be great whether he was thrown in the fire as a rookie or not. If guys like Trey Lance or Sam Darnold can't play, then you know what? When they start their rookie year, it doesn't really matter. So that is a philosophy that I've come around on, George. I don't really see the benefit whatsoever of sitting a rookie quarterback, unless it's like a Jordan Love situation when you have Aaron Rodgers as a starter and you said, okay, a year or two and then we'll play him, fine. Otherwise, you get your rookie quarterback. I think you play him right away because I don't really see the downside.
Yeah, and I think it's the only position we talk about that with. You ever hear anybody say, well, maybe the receiver needs to sit out for a year, maybe the
True.
corner
You're
needs
right.
to wait a year. It's only quarterback that we talk about that with. And it is a different position with a lot of different responsibilities. And I do think it's case by case situation. If Richardson didn't have the mental toughness that he has, I might be more along the lines of, hey, you know what? Let him learn, a little bit in the background for a little bit. Give him a package maybe to come in and play in specific situations. Because if you feel like the adversity is going to set him back and ruin him, then you don't want to do this. I don't think that they feel like that's the case with this guy at all. And I think again, I think he showed that out there in his first preseason game that he's going to be able to bounce back from that kind of thing. He played in the SEC. He's used to the criticism. He's used to the media coverage. He's used to 80,000 fans screaming for his life. So I don't think there's anything in that uh, regard that's going to be too big for him. He's been through all of that. Now he can just go out and play. And like I said, there's going to be mistakes. I mean, Shane said it again today. He's going to make mistakes. He's a rookie. Rookies make mistakes. But that's part of the package right now. You're going to live with that because you're hoping, as we've been saying all along, that by the time you get to January, he's really come along and you're feeling really good about where he's at. And he's gotten better, every step of the way.
To your point, George, if you're afraid of how a quarterback is going to respond to adversity or one bad game or one interception getting to his head, he's screwed. No quarterback is perfect. And so if you can't handle throwing a pick, whether you start your first game as a rookie or you sit for 4 years like Jordan Love has, and now you're finally thrown into the fire. If you can't handle failure, then it doesn't matter how long you sit for, you are not destined for success. And honestly, the longer you sit, all you're doing is then delaying the inevitable. Like, right, this is a very impatient society. And especially when it comes to quarterbacks, we look at 3 years, right? Because that's after year 3 is the first time you're extension eligible for a quarterback. And now with the price going up and up and up, teams want to get in early to save a little bit of money because quarterback contracts are still one-upping each other. So the longer you wait, the more you're paying. So now people look at, okay, first chance to pay him year 3. Let's see what we got after that 3rd year. I would rather, if I'm the Colts, think they're doing the right thing, give Anthony Richardson 3 years of experience, 3 years of film, 3 years of opportunities to prove whether he can be a franchise quarterback or not, rather than give him 2.5 years or 2 years if you're sitting the entire rookie season. All you're doing is giving him less of an opportunity to grow and learn, and you're only amplifying the pressure because now, again, I don't think that year 3 marker, George, is really changing a lot. Like, people want to know, okay, it's time to pay him. Can we pay him? How are we feeling good about, our quarterback? Should we pick up the 5th year option as well? Like, how we doing here? And so that bar of year 3, year 4, roughly, is not changing. So all you're doing by sitting a quarterback is almost essentially shortening their window for success and amplifying whether if they get off to a rough start, I think the boo bird's going to be faster and louder because now you expect more after you sit for an entire year because you're kind of teased of just wait till next year. Oh, wait till, Richardson is fully unlocked. Then you'll really see. If he struggles early on, we've seen it. I mean, you see it in San Francisco, George. Trey Lance has 4 starts to his career. 4 starts. And now all of a sudden, basically, he's fighting for the 3rd string backup job. So that's a guy where I think, in a way, partly on him, but also partly on expectations being so high. And when you sit for a year, you don't exactly, maybe the rookie mistakes you make are benefiting you, but now you're doing them a year or 2. So now all of a sudden, again, you're slowing the growth and you're pushing that development back a year. I don't see the positives in doing that. And that's why I think playing him year number 1 is the best chance for Richardson to succeed and really become the next franchise quarterback for this team.
Yeah, I think Colts are also in a unique position. I mean, some of those other teams you're talking about, the Chiefs were a playoff team, absolutely,
Right.
and went to the playoffs without Alex Smith starting that year instead of Patrick Mahomes. The 49ers were a Super Bowl team, that had designs on winning the whole thing, bringing home the Lombardi Trophy. So there was a lot more pressure. And I think the Colts are in a situation where they're not expected to make the playoffs this year. They're not expected to make a run at a division title. And so, you kind of have that freedom to put him out there and let him make his mistakes. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, you feel like we've talked for a long time that this year's more about getting ready for 2024 and 2025. And the only way you do that is get Anthony Richardson out there, let him improve, on the fly. And you hope that, again, next year you add another draft class to this. Maybe next year you start talking about a wild card run or maybe even, getting in division title. But I think it helps that he doesn't have that pressure on his shoulders. Those other guys would have walked in there with expectations. You're here and you better win it. The expectation in the NFL is to win, period. It doesn't matter, outside what people are saying, but that pressure won't be the same on Anthony Richardson as it would be, say, had he been walking into San Francisco or Kansas City at the times that Trey Lance and Patrick Mahomes joined those teams.
I think the worst thing the Colts could have done here is not even sitting Richardson for a full year. I think sitting him for like a month, 6 weeks. We saw the Bears do that with Andy Dalton, where Andy Dalton started, I think, the first 2 games before he was benched for Justin Fields. Kenny Pickett was the backup in Pittsburgh for, I think it was the first 3 or 4 games. Mitch Trubisky got the start, and then Pickett came to town. Like, that is one, George, where I don't get that philosophy whatsoever. I think it's unfair for the team, unfair for the rookie quarterback, unfair for the starting quarterback of just like you're basically having the rookie breathe down your neck and everyone wants to see the rookie quarterback and every single incompletion, the fans are booing. Like, it's just a mess for the team and does not allow you to truly get your best foot forward. So I'm glad the Colts are also not doing that stupid charade of, oh, Gardner's going to play and then we'll see, maybe in a month from now we'll reassess. I'm glad, again, not only are they not playing this game late in the training camp, they're also not playing the game of we're going to start Gardner Minshew and then by week 3, pull them. I think that does the team no good. The quarterbacks overall, both of them no good. So I'm glad they're also avoiding that stupid decision that is starting to become a little more prevalent in the NFL than really it should. Let me also ask
you do that too. You build your offense around the veteran because he's who's starting the season, and then your rookie's walking into an offense that was made for somebody else, and it makes no sense.
It's totally stupid. Like, it just doesn't help anyone. You're right. It does not help anyone, and it hurts all parties involved. It just wastes, frankly, time. Wastes a lot of time that you don't really have the luxury of. Let me ask you this, George, because I thought it was interesting. You had Ed Dodge, assistant GM for the Colts, talk to the media on Monday. And he was talking about how the thing he liked about Anthony Richardson the most is that he saw each and every day slight improvement. He really thought from rookie, mini camp to OTAs to mini camp to training camp, he saw growth and progression in AR's game from June now to here we sit here in early, or I guess technically mid-August. How about yourself, George? Have you seen, do you think that's one of the reasons why we got this announcement today on August 15th? Because we have seen continual growth? Like, is there anything that you've seen, because you've been there at every media availability, every practice that you've been able to go to, have you seen that kind of consistent growth that Dodds and Co. Have said they have seen?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of it was just confidence, just his understanding of what's going on around him and his comfort level, calling plays and running the same plays again and again. You just see him getting more and more confident in what he's doing, and the game speeds up on his end. We always talk about slowing down what he's seeing, but his ability to make decisions and be decisive, you just, even from the start of training camp till today, you can see a marked difference in him in terms of his own tempo, his own decision-making process. And I think that had as big a role as anything in this decision being made right now, that they've seen that steady growth from the first day he walked in the building, that first rookie mini camp till today where he's named the starter. Is almost not even the same quarterback. I mean, and there's still a lot to go. I think that's one of the big thing that everybody, involved in this, from Anthony Richardson himself to Gardner Minshew to Shane Steichen, everybody's saying, look, future is incredibly bright. I think Gardner said 3 or 4 times a day that Richardson has a chance to be really special, that this is his franchise and, he can take it over. But everybody also is saying there's still a lot of work to do. This is not a finished product. There's right. Still growth to be made, but I think the space that he's already traveled gives them a lot of confidence that that growth is going to continue.
I'm glad you brought up the word confidence, because I think that also in naming Richardson the starter on Tuesday, August 15th, with still so much time to go, allows that confidence to grow. Because not that, look, I'm not saying he was playing scared or you're afraid to make a mistake, but it is human nature when you are in a competition and you are facing a guy that has way more experience and knows the offense better than you. You don't want to be making mistakes, right? You don't be throwing interceptions, obviously, but especially when you're in a quarterback competition, you want to kind of make every opportunity you get, especially when they're limited, make it the best you possibly can. So it's almost just pure instinct to put extra pressure on yourself of, hey, I got to make sure this is the most perfect rep. I got 3 reps of the starters here today. I got to make sure they're perfect so I can show coach, hey, I'm ready to be QB1. And now when you are named the starter, it's almost like that pressure eases because now you're just going in the flow of the offense and taking what the defense gives you and taking, going with the ball where the kind of the play call dictates compared to trying to be Superman or a hero every single play and trying to show off that, hey, I could truly be the guy that you guys need. Let me show you how great I am. That pressure almost subsides in a way and allows the confidence in the playbook, confidence in the offense, confidence, just overall control of the game to grow as well. I think it was really interesting, George. You heard after the game in Buffalo, Richardson talk about how he was kind of basically in awe, starstruck, if you will, that he made it in the NFL. Darius Rush echoed a similar sentiment, George. And I think by playing Rush a lot early, and especially Richardson early, you allow them in a way to kind of move that feeling aside and then truly get back to playing football, which I think is honestly the best way they're going to improve. The less starstruck, the less pinch me, I made it sort of thing, the quicker that feeling goes away, the more hungrier you get to now improve and want to be your best.
Yeah, I think both those guys mentioned, at some point they're walking on the field before the game. They kind of stopped and took it all in and realized, hey, I made it. I'm about to play an NFL game. And it was a little bit, awestruck kind of a moment. I think they both, even just to your point, I think, getting out there into the game, I think for Richardson, as soon as he threw the interception, that's gone. Okay, it's time to play. And, now it's down to business. And I'm sure for Rush, getting that interception on his end and returning to the end zone, okay, now I'm here and I can make plays. By the way, he says he's got that ball and ready to frame it back in his apartment. So the veteran move by him, making sure that he got that first interception, got that first touchdown.
Can I ask you a really quick question about that, George? Does that count?
Even in the brief period of time that we saw them, here in Buffalo, I think you've seen them start to settle in a little bit.
Can I ask you a really quick question? I'm not trying to throw Darius Rush under the bus here, but does that count? I get it. You got your first pick in your first game, but it's not going in the stat sheet. Wouldn't you want to maybe frame the first football you get, and for an interception or a touchdown that actually counts?
Maybe he's setting up a room. He's going to get 100 of them. This is the very first one. I don't know. I think you're 100% right. It's always funny because we write about NFL debut, and it's preseason. And then when week 1 comes around, what are we talking about again? Oh, NFL debut. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it does and it doesn't. I think it's more just the idea of you did it on an NFL field in an NFL uniform for the first time.
That's fair. And hopefully you're right. You're right, George. He has 100 picks. And guess what? That first one, that preseason ball can go back. You can go, in the garage, maybe use that as a little rack around the backyard football ball, just because, hopefully he's going to have plenty of picks and plenty of touchdowns and memorable moments to where that preseason one fades relatively quicker here. All right. So obviously a lot there on Anthony Richardson. Big news. 8th straight year, a different Colts starting quarterback is under center. But for the first time in 5 years, George, this one feels hopefully like this is not going to, this is going to end the streak. And this is going to be the guy that now the Colts will be lining up under center for a long time now. What's going to be exciting is Bears coming to town, right? Wednesday, Thursday, joint practices. So again, a really big next 2 days for this Colts offense. Maybe the two most important days left in training camp. The Eagles next week is on a short week. We'll see how much the starters play on Saturday. Maybe also that determines how much they play or little they play against the Eagles in joint practice next week. But at least 2 of the biggest practices remaining, George, are upcoming here these next 2 days of Wednesday and Thursday. Let me ask you this question. We saw obviously a lot of the Buffalo defensive starters play in that preseason game on Saturday. Not a lot of big-time Buffalo offensive starters play. So the offense got a good test for the Colts. Defense, you could say, really did not get the full Monty of the Bills offense. Who are these joint practices against the Bears more important for? The offense or the defense?
I'm going to cheat here and sit on the fence just because the offense at the end of the day, everything that happens with Richardson is the most important thing to this team. I mean, that's just the bottom line. The quarterback's got to come along. He's got to develop. It's not just this year. It's the next 5-10 years of this franchise. So I guess that's the most important, just because it always comes back to number 5. But when you look at the other side, that defense is so young. Secondary in particular is so young. You got Dallas Flowers and DJ Baker out there right now starting, and it looks like for right now, that's how they would line up week 1. But I think between them, they have something like 6 games of NFL experience. And most of that's on special teams. Very little of it is defensive snaps. So it's hugely important to get out there against Justin Fields, who's by all accounts having a great training camp, had a really terrific opening preseason game. DJ Moore is going to be out
Historic.
there running routes for him. You're going to get a test out there, and you're going to get it. It's not just going to be a drive or two like it would be in a normal preseason game. You're going to get it on back-to-back days, tons of reps. 40, 50 reps probably out there at least against, the starters. So it's hugely important. And I really think the secondary, to me, the two biggest units, quarterback on offense, 100%, that's obvious. And the secondary on defense, just because those guys, so few of them have taken an NFL snap in a competitive environment. The first time they did it was Saturday. And like you said, there was no Stephon Diggs, there was no Josh Allen. And now they're going to get a really heavy dose of the Chicago starters.
I will give an answer. I'll say the offense is still more important. Even though, like I said, the defense did not really get a big test, and now with Justin Fields coming in, and if you saw on Saturday, his perfect passer rating, 3 of 3, 129 yards, 2 touchdowns, which, by the way, all 3 of those passes did not go past the line of scrimmage. Wide receiver screen, running back dump off. So Fields, you talk about just doing more with less. Just, hey, you take the ball and you go make some plays. Talk about an easy day at the office. But even though now you're going to get a true test for the first time in preseason going against Fields, and like you said, DJ Moore, and a lot of young, talented players on the Bears offense, it's still, like I said, all about Anthony Richardson. And 2, even though some guys, like obviously Matt Eberflus was not there when Richardson was there, obviously, but Eberflus still knows guys on this roster and still can kind of get an idea of what the offense is going to look like. So even though I'm sure they're not game planning too much, it's still a nice test with some familiarity on the other side. Be a nice little pose of a challenge for Richardson. Like I mentioned, his development is all that matters. The defense is 32nd in the NFL this upcoming season, but Richardson looks good and shows some flashes, and the Colts lose every game 40-35. I'll be feeling pretty damn good, George, going to 2024. I can promise you that. So even though, yes, the defense does need a challenge and really did not get one in Buffalo, it's still all about the offense. It's still all about how does Anthony Richardson react to now a defense that's going to really, as we know, Eberflus kind of drop back and make you pick them apart. Will you see? Probably not going to run a lot because still even though it's live, it's still not live for the quarterback, but still just a nice test to his development and get him all the first team reps with the starter. So just everything revolves around number 5. I'll still go in terms of importance here. The offense, and especially too, if they, get a good amount of reps on Wednesday, Thursday, you assume maybe little to zero series for the starters on Saturday against the Bears, which almost, again, heightens the importance then of the next 2 days of making sure that these reps they're getting against the Bears starting defense really do matter.
Absolutely. I'd be shocked if Justin Fields plays on Saturday, for instance. I mean, what would the point be? The defense will get their look at him, right now. And I would imagine a lot of the Bears defensive starters probably won't play either. That's just normal order of business here in the NFL. You do these joint practices and then your starters pretty much, watch from the sideline. So huge couple days here at Grand Park. And I think you mentioned Eberflus. I think he's gonna be a little fired up. I mean, he's gonna come in here and want to get the best of his old team. I mean, you never want to go in and feel like you lost to those guys, right? I mean, it was his choice to leave. Obviously, he wasn't thrown out the window. He got promoted and everything's good between him and the franchise, but still, and then whenever you go back, if you play your brother in the driveway, you want to win.
Right.
Whenever there's that familiarity, you want to win. And I imagine there'll be a little bit of an edge to the Bears in that regard.
And should be a very good atmosphere as well at Grand Park for the last 2 practices of training camp, at least in Westfield, before it kind of shifts back to the Colts facility and we kind of get closer and closer to getting ready for a real game week here, George. Last thing we'll talk about, and thankfully it's at the end of the pod, not the beginning of the pod, which at least, again, goes back to a happy podcast, which has been a lot of drama, a lot of negativity on this pod for most of training camp. And it's nice we start off on a positive, Anthony Richardson starting. We do have to talk about Jonathan Taylor, George, because we did get some updates. And I think some news around the NFL also kind of indicates where the direction of Jonathan Taylor is going to go. So reports have been out there that, hey, this is the week Jonathan Taylor, after last week leaving the Colts facility to rehab his ankle. We don't know where he was, but we know he was rehabbing. Now he's reportedly back in Westfield. George, you can confirm not at practice on Tuesday, correct?
Not at practice on Tuesday.
So reportedly in the area, in Indy, or at least in the state of Indiana, we believe, not at practice on Tuesday. Don't know if he'll show up to the joint practices on Wednesday or Thursday. But at least going forward here, Shane Steichen said this, he'll return to practice when he's 100%. We have no idea what percent Jonathan Taylor is at least according to Stephen Holder and ESPN, it sounds like Jonathan Taylor will not step back on the field again until he is 100%. Again, that could be a leverage ploy. That could be one of those things where, hey, I'm not feeling totally back, just a way to milk your injury a little bit longer if you're still not happy with your contract situation. But I think what happened around the NFL on Monday, George, highlights one thing that's going to happen here. He's going to be a Colt week 1. He's going to be a Colt this season, bare minimum, lock it up. Because you had two teams that needed running backs, both now take themselves out of the Jonathan Taylor sweepstakes. Jets on Monday signed Dalvin Cook. Patriots signed Ezekiel Elliott. The market, again, that was already, we believe, to be pretty small with no obvious suitors coming out there to get in the mix for Jonathan Taylor. Now two teams that needed a running back are out. This, to me, George, screams he'll be back sooner rather than later, but bare minimum week number 1, I think he'll be on the field just because the market for Taylor was already small. And now it's basically zero with two teams that needed RB signing RBs on Monday.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a good day again for running backs in general. Those two guys, neither one of them signed a big deal. And Dalvin Cook, if he's only a 1 year, $8.6 million guy now, coming off back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons, it's hard to imagine who's going to get paid, in that environment. Zeke is a little bit more banged up. I think his deal is not quite as shocking as Cook's was, but again, it takes the Patriots off this board of looking for a running back. Maybe the Dolphins are out there still, looking for somebody, but what are they willing to pay and what are they willing to give up? And I don't know, maybe if you're JT, you come out to these joint practices and lobby some of your old coaches. Most of that coaching staff in Chicago was here when he was drafted in Indianapolis. So, maybe try to lobby them a little bit, see if they'll get involved in this market.
Hey, they got a bevy of picks, George. You want to throw a first-round pick over? Hey, I don't think Chris Ballard would say no to that. But also, too, you look at what happened Monday. Zach Martin, right, all-pro guard for the Cowboys, is holding out, wanted a new deal, felt he was woefully underpaid. And eventually the holdout ended yesterday with him not getting a rework contract, but getting basically a little bit more money on his deal, getting it fully guaranteed. That's where I think this is ending up, George, where Jonathan Taylor will be back. I think he will sign, and the Colts will work something out where they give him a little bit more money in 2023 up front and revisit this after the offseason. We saw with Saquon Barkley, he was very upset he was franchise tagged. The Giants basically gave him an extra $1 million, I believe all incentive. So he got a little bit more money, and he was right back out there without a holdout whatsoever. Whether it's $1 million, $2 million, however you want to structure it, maybe add some incentives in there as well. I do think the Colts should and will rework the contract, create a little bit of goodwill between the two sides, have him maybe go from 95% on the ankle to 100% and get him practicing sooner rather than later. But I think that's where, to me, this is ending up, where he's not going to be traded. He's obviously still very upset. And just for 2023, when you have the cap space, you have $20 million in cap space, George. It's not like they're strung up against the cap and saving it for, these big paydays that are coming. 2023, give him a little extra, was it $4.3 million? I think is the exact number he's getting this year. Bump up to $6-7 million. It's not hurting anybody. Have JT be a little bit happier going to this year and revisit it at the end of the season. I just don't see how that is I don't see how that is not the outcome when it's all said and done with this whole Jonathan Taylor Colts holdout saga.
I mean, it seems like the most likely endpoint right now. Like I've been saying for a while, the clock's ticking, obviously, on Taylor's side of things now, because as they get closer and closer to week 1, his options dwindle. And you see New England's off the board. The Jets are off the board. At some point, realistically, he's going to be faced with the decision to either play this year under his current contract or to sit out. And I just don't see how that helps him. So I do think ultimately, they're probably going to find a way to give him a win, from a contract standpoint of some kind, whatever that may be, and get him out there and start working with Anthony Richardson and see how things can go. I still think his best leverage at this point, the best thing he can do is go out there and have an amazing season. Remind everybody why he was, so good those first 2 years in the league, and why everyone here was so fired up about him. I think if you get the fans behind you, if you can get them, to start supporting your case vocally, we've seen the owner swayed by that before. Maybe that's a way that you can open up contract talks. But if nothing else, 31 other teams are watching too, and if they see that you're healthy, you look like you did in 2021, a market may appear.
Absolutely. It's sad, but it's the truth. There's really no benefit to holding out. No benefit to even standing your ground, George, as a running back, because teams don't care. We've seen it more times than not. Next man up does work. The Colts are by far a better team with Jonathan Taylor on the field. And especially now, kind of going back to go for a circle we started the podcast with, everything has to be geared now that Anthony Richardson is the starter, geared towards putting him in the best position to succeed. And that clearly, George, hot take here, the best position for Anthony Richardson to succeed is the number 20 in the backfield. So again, if you're the Colts, it makes zero sense for you not to give Jonathan Taylor a little bit of love here. Give him a few extra bucks. Make him feel, if not happy, less disgruntled going back to practice and get him on the field. So he's not at practice on Tuesday, George. We still have we have no details whatsoever about his health, how close he is. If you were to put a timeline on it or any sort of just guess at this point, when is maybe the earliest or the likeliest we could see Jonathan Taylor, assuming he doesn't hold out, which I think we both believe he will not do, back on the practice field for this team?
Yeah, I mean, I've been so good at guessing this offseason in dates that I should definitely dip back into this. But, if you look at it logically, you're probably not going to put him out there this week against the Bears. I mean, you're not going to be like, welcome back, go
That would be
the joint practices. And you're probably not going to put him out there next week against the Eagles when the only practice, really, the one day of practice is with them. So just from a logical standpoint, which again, it's bizarre world, so who knows? Logic may not apply. Doesn't always. We've seen that the last 18 months here. Not necessarily always the case. But if you're looking at it from a logical perspective, you would think the Monday after Philadelphia, you got 2 weeks to gear up for Jacksonville. Everything's focused on the regular season then. And in no small measure here, the practices are closed. So if there is some rust, no one's going to see it.
That would be malpractice if you see Jonathan Taylor all of a sudden tomorrow on the field running against the first team Bears defense as a welcome back to the league sort of thing. That makes a lot of sense, George. Because you're right. That's actually a really astute observation. The last 2 weeks, you're not the media's not there. So if he has a bad day, and I'm assuming he's going to be rusty because with an ankle injury, I don't know how much conditioning and cardio he's doing, but you would think that's one of the areas that's most limited because you got to be off your feet or take it easy with the ankle. So you're still trying to work back into game shape. Still trying to get used to getting hit again. Best time to do that is behind closed doors. And guess what? You don't have the drama of 6,500 fans watching your every move, seeing every single, mannerism you do, trying to dissect every talk that's happening between teammates and who's high-fiving who and other things. There's a lot of drama you avoid and a lot of speculation and unnecessary chatter you avoid by basically hiding him for 2 weeks behind closed doors and have him the next time we see him publicly, week number 1 on the field with Anthony Richardson and co. I hope you're right, because then that's also assuming, George, that the ankle injury is either not that serious or really not an issue, and that as soon as kind of training camp, quote unquote, officially ends, all of a sudden now he's back. I hope that's the road we're going down, because that means the ankle injury itself is really not as big of a deal as maybe it could appear with him leaving the team to go to get rehab. And it's maddeningly frustrating, obviously, as we know that we don't have any details, but truly don't know how hurt he is. Truly don't. And it's one of the most frustrating aspects of this whole saga. But hopefully, with him at least being in Westfield, coming back after being wherever the hell he was, could have been in Hawaii, he could have been in the Netherlands, he could have been in Canada for all we know. No idea. Wherever he was, he is at least reportedly back in the state of Indiana. Now, hopefully, we'll see him out at joint practices for Wednesday. Bare minimum, just on the field in a t-shirt, talking to his teammates.
Or Pat Eberflus, whatever the case may be.
Ryan Poles, all of a sudden, him and Jonathan Taylor walk into a far corner away from everybody. I wonder what they're talking about.
The standard has been set here. A luxury motor coach. If you're going to meet with them, they're in practice.
Although if you're the Bears, I guess that's probably that's a bad omen, right? Because the luxury motor coach usually means you're not getting what you want.
It did not end well. That's a good
Maybe
point.
they bring like a limo or something like that. Maybe a little bit, more luxurious. Say, hey, JT, we'll change your fortunes. It won't be like the last time you had to talk with an important executive in your organization. We will treat you differently here. To end the pod on a lighter note, George, how about this? Peyton Manning is back. Not back on the field, not back in the NFL, back in the classroom. It was announced on Monday. His alma mater, Tennessee, has hired Peyton to be a professor for their communication school. And I think he's going to be teaching or just kind of dropping in here and there in a few classes to give some students his words of wisdom in the communication field. As two people that obviously are in the communication fields ourselves, George, let me tell you this. I would not want Peyton as my professor. Imagine that 8 a.m. as like a senior in college when you're just focused on partying and having a good time. And there's Peyton Manning yelling at you probably on Zoom of why you didn't use the correct, comma here, or how you can improve this speech whatsoever. Those kids, I'm sure there's a race to sign up to, oh, wow, Peyton Manning's my professor. This is going to be awesome. I think they'll realize quickly after the first 5 minutes of the first class, this is a terrible idea. I'm out. This is horrible.
Yeah, you better be all in. I know that. Go talk to any of his receivers when he was here in Indianapolis, and I'm sure it was the same way in Denver. You better be all in because he's not going to put up with any kind of hijinks. He's not going to put up with 95% is not enough for Peyton Manning. You better be 100% all in all the time. Now, I will tell you, if I had to pick a former quarterback to be my professor, I think Andrew Luck. He's more laid back. I think I would be okay with Andrew Luck as my professor. Peyton Manning, I can't handle that stress, man.
Even if he's just over Zoom, because who knows? Maybe he will fly to Knoxville. He can fly private. He can afford it. So maybe he does fly from Denver to Knoxville, I don't know, once every few weeks to be in person. But even over Zoom, he would scare the hell out of me, George.
Absolutely.
Yelling, hey, turn around. Who's yelling over there? He would command the room, even if he's
I've been on the other
miles away.
I've had him not happy with me, and it's not a very fun experience. It's not something you want to live through. I'll tell you that.
I think before his first class, you should have Jeff Saturday come in and just basically give the kids words of wisdom. Hey, you do not want to get on Peyton's bad side. Even for how good of a relationship we had, this guy's ready to kill me on the sidelines during the game and basically told me to do my job, worry about what I'm doing. So if you think that Peyton, you're going to get one over on Peyton or he's going to take it easy on you, you got a whole other thing coming.
Absolutely. No, I would not be anywhere near that class. Although I'm sure it'd be highly entertaining. I would like to watch other people go through that class. I'm sure we'll get a really good commercial from it, but I don't need to live that. No, thank you.
Yeah, I think we'll see a lot of late drop for that class for sure. And it's something to great. And Peyton does not seem, George, like someone who's going to be an easy grader too. No. You're not half-assing it and get even a C in that class. No. He won't be afraid to fail you. Even if it's the last class you need to graduate. I see him being, buddy, we'll see you in the spring.
He is absolutely perfectionist, and I'm sure he's going to demand that from each of those students. But you know what? The ones that stick it out probably be better for it.
Probably take our jobs sooner than later. That's for sure. They'll come out polished and ready to go.
I'm soft. It's going to be easy for them to get out of the way.
Oh, so God bless the students in Peyton's class. And now let's go, George. We got some good news. Finally have the starting quarterback named on August 15th. It is now Anthony Richardson's team. The AR era has finally come. Let's go. Should be a lot of fun seeing him.
And you already have the t-shirt. You're all set up.
AR time. It is. The clock has finally, I was going to say struck midnight, but that should be that probably is not the term you want to use here. That means things are coming to an end. The dawn is here. The sun has risen. AR time is officially on the clock in good times. Hopefully, George, this is the start of an era. For hopefully the next decade, we're talking about good quarterback playing, no early quarterback retirements, and a lot of success with this team going forward here. But a very exciting day in Colts land nonetheless. I'm very excited to see how he does play now and perform against the Bears in these next 2 days. We will be back Wednesday and Thursday to break down both joint practices. So obviously a lot to talk about now that we know AR is a starter, and we'll get a lot of those first team reps as well. So if you haven't, still time. Don't panic just yet, but now is the time. Subscribe on YouTube, Blue Horseshoe Pod. Check us out wherever you get your podcasts, Blue Horseshoe Podcast. If you have a question for us, ask us. BlueHorseshoePod@gmail.com. BlueHorseshoePod@gmail.com. We'll answer your questions. hopefully answer your questions and get you a part of the show as well. So, George, great to have some positivity coming out of Westfield. Hopefully we'll continue it here on Wednesday. Next time we'll talk to you. So have a great rest of your Tuesday. We'll talk to you after the joint practice number 1 with the Bears right here on the Blue Horseshoe Pod.